Let's talk politics in the classroom. On Friday afternoon, one of my students, who is the president of the Seminole High School Wildlife Conservation Club, came up to me and said, Mr. Cole, there's an environmental problem. She brought up the political issue and asked what we're going to do about it. I've spent the weekend thinking about what can my students do within the rules of the school system to be involved with these political issues that they want to get involved with. So, having done that, along with most people know me as the guy who's been working on trying to get the state bird changed for the last 28 years for the state of Florida. That's actually my students have been the driving force behind that, but I'm kind of like a quarterback in the NFL who gets a lot of credit for it. So I will share with you what I've learned over the last 28 years as far as politics in the classroom. The first thing I would tell you as a professional courtesy is make sure that anything you're involved with is relevant to your subject matter. If it's not relevant to your subject matter, you can get yourself in trouble. I'm fortunate that AP Environmental Science has a lot of politics involved with it. We talk about the Endangered Species Act, Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act. These are all things that they're tested on the national exam for college credit. So it gives me some cover to be able to talk about some of these issues. Obviously, subject matter like history, government, debate, all of those are also subjects where you can incorporate some political discussion in your classroom. And I'll give you some best practices on that. Having said that, this year we're going to have a very, very contentious presidential election. And I think that's pretty much incorporated into almost every subject matter. It's important that we explain the importance of voting to students, and even more so in today's polarized political climate, to talk to them about the importance of respecting different opinions. One of the things I tell students all the time, especially if I've got students who are on polar opposite ends of a political discussion, is that we're one America. We all want the same thing. Everybody wants a great America. The difference is how do we get there? And that's where politics come into play, as the discussion as to what's the best way to proceed to make this country the greatest country it can possibly be, and that we all want the same thing. We just need to discuss how we get there. And it's important that people listen to each other and understand you're allowed to have differences of opinion and still be friends and still be on the same side here. Make sure you get in the habit of shutting down any inappropriate comments. If you get somebody who's making inappropriate comments, shut down the discussion right there. I talked about the importance of voting. At all age levels, I think it's appropriate to talk about how this democracy works, how it functions as a republic, and the importance of voting, because that's how we uh, influence our politicians to basically do what's in the right interest or the correct interest of us as American citizens. Don't push personal agendas or ideas. If you're pushing personal issues, you're basically committing educational malpractice in my mind. So if I look at the Florida scrub jay, for instance, when we talk about that, when I initially started that, I just wanted a letter writing campaign. I could care less what the state bird was. Now, obviously, at this point, having been involved with it for 28 years, I'm a little biased, and I would kind of like to see the little bird become the state bird. But it's one of those things where it's relevant to my subject matter, and I'm not going to push that agenda. Some years I have a bunch of students who are hardcore who want to push for it. Other years I have students who are like, you could care less what the state bird is, and either of those are fine. The year that we started it, that we were hardcore, I had 153 students write letters in favor of designating the Florida scrub jay as a state bird, and 3 who were opposed. And it's important that you validate the opinions of those who are opposed. If you can't make an argument for both sides of an issue, you should not be involved with it. And they had great reasoning. The 3 who were opposed are like, you know what? It's tradition. People think it's the state bird. It could cost some money to change it to the Florida scrub jay, changing textbooks and different things. So they had valid points. And I remember when we went up and testified before the House of Representatives, that was something that our representative wanted to hear. He wanted to hear both sides of the argument. And I think it's good that we share both sides of the argument. For me, I'm very fortunate that I'm very centrist, so I can see both sides of most arguments. If you're not, if you can't see both sides of the argument and can't make the argument in favor of both sides of the issue, I'd stay out of it. When I start, obviously, in my subject matter, I believe in global climate change. And when I'm debating it with somebody that I don't know or who I want to make have a discussion with, when they're done talking, I will share with them the talking points that they missed for their side of the argument. Obviously, I usually take the pro climate change argument. I do believe it's occurring, but when they're arguing with me, I'll say you forgot this point, and that point. And I think it carries with it some credibility that now they know you're listening to them. Now they know you understand their viewpoint, but you're still sitting on this side of the spectrum. A lot of times with my students, I'll actually debate environmental issues with them because my class is an elective. A lot of them are very green. A lot of them are environmentalists. And I will take the opposing side of issues just to show them that there is a side that has some validity to it. Usually it has to do with economics or other issues like that. And if they don't come prepared, um, they usually get decimated in the debate, and then I have to go back and show them here's the talking points that you missed that you should have had. But you need to be prepared that when you're talking to somebody who's well educated on the other side of the issue, these are the talking points they're going to share with you. And that's really what it is that almost everything out there has two sides of an issue. Another professional practice, students should not know who or what you voted for. They should never know who or what you voted for. Again, when they start asking me, I shut it down. I tell them, look, I can't share that information with you. The only thing I'll share with you is that I typically vote for who I think is going to help America and the state of Florida become the best it can be. Um, Again, I talked about validating opinions and that emphasize we all want the same thing. The difference is how we think we're going to get there. Now, if you get involved with something like our advocacy for the Florida scrub jay, it needs to, one, be optional, no grades assigned to it or anything. The students involved with the Florida scrub jay campaign do not receive extra credit. They do not receive a grade. This is all of their own free accord. If they don't want to participate, they don't have to participate. This is, for me, it has to be student driven or I'm not going to be involved with it. That's how you get yourself in trouble, is if you start pushing an agenda of some sort. If you correspond with government officials, we typically write letters and send emails. Understand anything that you send to a government official becomes public record. So if I'm sending notes, I'll have the students put their first name, last initial. And typically, um, again, just for protection of identities, if you're doing that, I would definitely do first name, last initial, and you may not want to do emails. Any student who's involved with our advocacy to try to change the state bird to the Florida scrub jay gets a permission form signed from their parents saying that they can use social media, that they can email um, politicians, and that these things become public record. I believe in full transparency, keeps you out of trouble. Handwritten notes carry a lot more weight with politicians than emails. So if you have time, and it's also good for the kids to work on their handwriting. So if you're involved with something like that, you might want to do some handwritten notes. Politicians want to hear from you. That's the one thing that I've heard for the last 28 years that I didn't necessarily believe when I started this, but politicians do want to hear from you. They do want to hear from your students. And as they always tell me, we can't fix it if we don't know it's broken. And we don't know it's important unless you bring it to our attention that it's important to you. So it is important to correspond with politicians. And for me, I think fundamentally at the end of this thing, if you really get to know me, everything for me is about giving students a voice, teaching them to think for themselves. There's going to be students who have different opinions than you do, and that's okay. It's not our job to influence their opinions. It's their parents' jobs to do that. It's their job to do that and grow as they challenge things and learn. It's not our job to impose values on them. And that's okay because we can't all think the same way. We need to have differences of opinion. That's what makes this country great. And again, last pro tip is don't get involved with anything if you don't understand both sides of the issue, because when your students are discussing it, you need to be able to back both sides of the issue. I hope this gives you some guidance as far as this upcoming year. As far as the presidential election coming up, I would tell you um, have the kids stick to facts. If they want to debate the issue, make sure that they have. My rule for students is always have three references, three unbiased sources that you can reference if somebody claims something. So if the kids are having a debate over that, make sure you keep it civil and shut it down if things start to get a little out of hand. Have a great school year. You guys are heroes. It is us teaching students how to civically disagree and share differences of opinions in a productive manner that's going to save this democracy and make this country have this country continue to be the great country that it is. You guys are awesome. Have a great school year. Talk to you soon.